Today I'm going to process a portraiture photograph to black and white in fine art style using the Black and White Artisan Pro panel. Many people have been asking me if I could also do a demonstration portraiture, because a lot of people think that you can only use a panel for architecture or landscapes or still life, but of course you can also use this for portraiture photographs. So I've been provided a photograph by Eric Webb. So it's not my own photograph, and I'm going to process it to black and white in fine art style. Well, furthermore, I'm not going to do any explanations at all, so I'm not going to explain how the panel works. I'm not going to explain how to create masks, I'm just going to demonstrate it. I'm not going to explain how to use, evaluate and identify the correct luminosity mask. Also for that there are several tutorials on YouTube, but also on my website. So basically I'm not going to do anything, just showing you the highlights of the workflow. So let me get started. So this is the photo that has been provided by Eric Webb. I'm going to process this to black and white, fine art, and it's going to be something similar to this photograph. So this is a famous photograph by Yusuf Karsh of Audrey Hepburn. So I'm going to process it in this kind of style. And the workflow that I'm going to be using is this specific workflow. You can find it on my website, you can download it. So basically these are the highlights of my workflow. So first of all, we're going to start with determining the figure and ground. I'm not going to explain what figure and ground is. You can look it up in one of the other videos and on my website. Then I'm going to isolate the figure from the ground. I'm also going to isolate the lights from the shadows, and that's going to be done with luminosity mask. The first 2A is just plain hard masking. Then usually I would lower the contrast in the ground, would remove all the contrast and then darken and lighten the ground. Then I'm continuing with the figure, so basically the main subject. So also lowering the contrast in figure, then darken, lighten figure, and then increase contrast in and around figure, then bring back the details in figure using the luminosity mask and also in the ground. And then I'm also going to create depth per plane, and step number 10 can be inserted everywhere after step number 2. So basically, and typically I would do it over here, over there, and over there. So you will see that when I'm doing a demonstration. So for now, let's go to the demonstration. So I'm going to start with creating the hard mask. For that, I'm just going to use the basic Photoshop tools that are available. So subject selection, saving the selection now, calling it figure, deselect selection, going to channels. So here's the figure, and as you can see, it's a pretty good selection. Okay, so it's looking good. Okay, I also need the ground, so I'm going to stand on the channel, duplicate channel. I'm going to invert it and call it ground. All right, so now I have the figure and I have the ground. So the next step would be to isolate also her top, because I want to treat her body and her face and her hair differently than her top over here. So I'm going to create a separate selection for that. So for that, I'm going to be using luminosity mask. So I'm going to create a few dark luminosity masks to try to isolate her top. And again, this is something that I've been explaining in several other videos. One is the advanced masking video class. So if you really want to know all the ins and outs of how I do this, then just have a look at that video. Evaluate the luminosity mask, and I think I'm going to be using this one, number 5, to isolate her top from the rest of her body and the background. So duplicate channel. All right, so I can get rid of the rest now. And now what I'm going to do is to grab my marquee tool, just select this entire section there, go to Pro Tool, darken it normally. Set the brush to overlay. The rest looks good. Just to make sure that this is completely black, I'm going to stand on my channel called top, and then I'm going to load the ground and make sure that the rest is black. So by clicking on darkening. All right, so now I'm sure that the rest is black. Now I'm going to do the mask and mask correction. So If you want to know what that is, just have a look at my advanced masking video or one of the shorter YouTube video tutorials in my channel. So select top, and I'm gonna do this selection again. So I'm gonna reload the new selection because it's changing with every pass. So just to make sure that I have the latest version of the selection, I'm always gonna reload it again. Now I'm gonna do this with selective adjustments. Now I'm just going to do it a few times, and now it's almost completely white. So there are some black areas there, but I'm going to fix that with the brush again. First of all, I'm going to fix this. Okay, and I think it's looking good now. What I also want to do right now is to have the rest of her body. So I'm going to load the figure, then I'm going to subtract the top. I'm left now with upper figure. So here, there's always some residual white, so I'm going to fix that. So this is the upper figure. Also, I want to isolate her hair, so I can treat the hair differently. For that, I'm going to create a new luminosity mask again, and let me try out the darks. I think this is a little bit too dark, so I'm just looking at her hair. So maybe I need to use 3. Yeah, I think I'm going to use 3. So I'm going to duplicate that channel, call it hair. Okay, I can get rid of the rest. So now what I'm going to do is to first darken this entire part because I don't need that. Completely black. Load the ground. Completely darken it. Make it black. This I also need to fix. So now I'm just going to go over it with one pass. Not too many passes. Now I'm going to do the mask and mask correction again. So I'm going to load her hair. Let me be careful with it. First pure white. Again, select hair. So reload the selection so you have the most recent selection. Lighten. And now I'm going to do it once more before I switch over to selective adjustments. Now I'm going to do the same. So the mask and mask correction for the hair. But now I'm using this. And I think right now this should be enough. Maybe one more pass. Let's see, with 2. Okay, this is white enough. So this is good enough. Now I have the hair as well. So now I have the figure, the entire model, its background, her top, the upper part, and her hair. Now I'm going to create the luminosity mask. For that, I'm just going to go to a luminosity mask. So first of all, this is also explained in another video on YouTube, by the way. I'm going to create the wide range light luminosity mask, then a narrow range, and I'm doing the same for the dark luminosity mask. So let me start with lights. Okay, I need a wide range. Before I do that, I'm going to create a luminosity mask for her hair. I think 1 is a little bit too light, 2 is too dark. So let me create a few half values. I think this is good enough to bring in some highlights in her hair when I need to. So I'm calling that lights 1.5 hair highlights. Can get rid of the rest. So what I'm going to do now is to create a wide range luminosity mask, light luminosity mask for her face and her body. So let's start with lights again. This is a little bit too light because it affects her entire face. 3 is too dark. Need to be somewhere in between lights 2 and 3, so I'm just going to get rid of this first. So between 2 and 3, so this is 2.5. I think this is a good one because here you see this darker area around her cheeks. You see that there's still a little bit light, so I can bring in some highlights there. So I'm going to use this. I'm calling this wide range face and body. And now I also need a narrow range. So I'm going to create the lights again. So 2 is way too light. This is not narrow enough. This might be, yeah, I think this is good for the specular highlights. Calling this narrow range, face and body. And now I also need a super narrow range in case I need it. And I think for that I might need a quarter value, so 425, because I already have 4 for the as the narrow range luminosity mask. So this little bit more isolated, I'm gonna use that super narrow range. So now I have the for the hair, for the highlights, I have the wide range for the face and body, the narrow range and the super narrow range. And with this I'm going to create depth. Okay, so that's a new method of creating depth in amorphous shapes, in any kind of shapes or planes that are not flat like in architecture. Now I also need to create a dark luminosity mask, because if you want to create depth, you also need the dark luminosity mask to create the shadows, so there will be a transition from light to dark. So I'm going to create the darks. So let me have a look at 2. I think if I use 2 and then look at her face and body would be too much, I think. So I'm not going to use that. I think I might need something in between 2 and 3, because 3 is a little bit too, well, this could be used for the narrow range. Already copied that, so duplicate channel, dark 3, narrow range, face and body. I need something between 2 and 3 for the wide range. I think 2.5 might be a little bit too much. I'm going to go with quarter value. We have to look at 225, a little bit too light to my taste. So I'm going to go with 2.5. Yeah, I think this is better. So I'm calling this narrow range face body. Now what I have, something for the hair, for the lighter parts in the face, for the specular highlights, and I also have the shadows, the narrow range and the wide range. Let me put it in the right order. So once you have created the lights with the lights, wide range and narrow range, and the darks after that, you will automatically create depth in the human body. So now I can start with the black and white conversion and the adjustments. So let me start with the conversion. So I always use a neutral conversion. And like I said, I want to create something similar to the famous Audrey Hepburn photographs. So lighter background, a darker top, and just a very beautifully processed kind of image. That's what I'm trying to aim for. So in this case, normally I would always start off with removing the contrast in the background. In this case, it doesn't need to happen because the background is already flat. There's no need to remove the contrast. So I'm going to start with lightening the background. So I'm loading the ground and I'm going to go to creating depth. Now let me start with bottom to top, lighten. Once more. Okay, now from top to bottom, lighten. Okay, this looks already better. So I'm gonna already merge them down. So here's the neutral, this is the with the lighter background. It still needs to be lighter, so what I'm gonna do is to do the same again. So from top to bottom, lighten, and from bottom to top, like so. And now I'm gonna merge it down. So I merge it down, but now I'm thinking that I'm gonna make it just a little bit lighter still from the bottom to the top. So let me do that from bottom to top, lighten. Okay, this is enough. So what I'm gonna do now is to work on our body. Let me start with a light luminosity mask. So for that I'm going to create a new duplicate layer. Select upper figure. And now what I'm going to do now is to first lower the contrast. Make it a little bit darker, like so. A little bit darker, like that. Okay. Okay, I've duplicated that layer for nothing because I didn't need to do that. And now I'm going to bring back the highlights. And now I'm going to create a duplicate layer. So select the upper figure. Now I'm going to select the the wide range for the face and body. Is that, and intersect it. Again, this is all explained in the other video tutorials. So going back to Pro Tools, now I'm gonna lighten it, like so. Before, after, let me check the forehead, because it looks a little bit light. What I wanted to do is to do a restore, but I don't think it's needed. So I brought back the lights. I'm also gonna add narrow range, so what I'm going to do is to load the upper figure, which is already done. So I'm going to go with the narrow range face and body intersected. Okay, I forgot to duplicate the layer, so I'm going to do that first. No. Okay, now I'm going to lighten it with this. You see? Yeah. All right. And let me see if I can also add some specular highlights. So before I do that, I'm just going to deselect it, create a new layer, like so. Load the figure, upper figure again. And now load the super narrow range, intersect it, lighten, lighten, lighten. Yeah, even more highlights. So we've got this, so I removed the contrast first, then brought back the light, even more light, and the specular highlights, like so. Okay, so that's what I've done. Now I'm adding some of the shadows, but before I do that, I just merge those layers first. Okay, I'm also gonna merge those layers. I'm gonna bring back some of the shadows now in her face. I'm going to create a new layer, upper figure. Okay, but now without her hair, because if I use a dark luminosity mask, then also her hair will be darkened, and I don't want that, so I'm going to subtract it. And now I'm going to use the dark luminosity mask, starting off with the white range. This should be the white range. I call it the narrow range, which is of course not the correct name, so this is the one. Intersect it. Okay, just get rid of the marching ends. And I'm going to darken it. Yeah, that's enough. Deselect it, create a new layer, and see if I'm gonna add the narrow range as well. So again, upper figure without the hair, subtract it like so. And now the narrow range, face and body, intersect like so, and just darken it a little bit. Yeah, not too much. So this from flat to lighten, bring back shadows and even more shadows. Now I'm gonna merge those down. Okay, so this is the neutral version with a changed background. Remove the contrast, brought back the lights, and brought back the shadow. So now we need something to fix her hair. I'm gonna create a new layer, and then also her eyes. So hair, and now intersect it. So instead of using the probe tools, I'm just going to use my brush, set it to light, overlay. I'm using something like 75%. Okay, and I'm just going to go over it. Okay, one more pass. Well, I guess a few more passes, but let me see where I end up with this pass. You know what? I'm just going to set it to 100%. This part's getting too bright, so I have to be careful there. This can use some more light. This too. Okay, before, after. Okay, I'm liking that. So I've done her hair, so I have to fix her eyes as well. So I'm going to create a new layer, like so. And for that, I think I can use the same luminosity mask as for the hair. All right, so already create a new layer. So I'm just loading this one. Just turn off the marching hands. Zoom in to brighten her eyes just a little bit. So I'm going to do that with the brush. Set it to 70% or something like that. Set to white. Just go over it. Small pass. So I'm not a retoucher. I'm just leaving it all the rest as it is. I'm just trying to process this photo to black and white and fine art style, which is something different than retouching a photo for the purpose of editorial photography and magazines and that kind of stuff. No, it's just black and white fine art photograph. So here, okay. So let's see for the rest. I can do something with her lips as well. For that I can use, this is too light, 2.5. I'm going to use lights 2.5 to brighten up her lips just a little bit. So I'm doing that in the same layer. Lights 2.5. Just be careful with it. So let's say 40%. Just to give it a sort of glow. Okay. This is enough. So now I think her eyes need to be just a little bit lighter. So I'm just going to load that again. 1.5. Just make her eyes just a little bit lighter still, because it's still a little bit too dark to my taste. It's already lighter, but I can use some more lighting. Okay, that is better. So her eyes are like that now. Also her lips are lighter. And this is basically what I had in mind. Okay, I forgot to do her top, so I'm just going to do the same for her top. So I'm just going to create a new layer, load the top, because it's a little bit too light to my taste. So I'm just going to make it darker, like this, in a very simple way, and cut basically what I want without making it too dark, by the way. So, okay, usually I would also try to fix this and this hair there, but this is not retouching. This is just black and white photograph in fine art style. And what I always like to do is to add a little bit of split toning, a very subtle kind of split toning. And for portraiture, I always like the low down, because it gives you a cooler light. But for the midtones and the shadows, it's going to be a little bit warmer. So I'm going to use that, low down. Set it to 95%, something like that. You can see now that the skin is a little bit warmer, while the background that's lighter is a little bit cooler. Okay, before, after. So now I've got something that I wanted to do that is similar to the famous use of cars photograph of Audrey Hepburn. And, well, this is the result, all done with the Black and White Artisan Pro panel in roughly 20-30 minutes. Thank you for watching.